Hey everyone, it's Steven from Campus Inc. We're back with another episode of the NIL show. Amazing guest today, Chris from Fanword. We're going to be talking it all up about NIL tech, bunch of things going on. Chris, what's going on? Nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys as well. Very excited to be here, and yeah, thanks for having me.
Sweet. Chris, where are you from?
From Germany. Can't hide the accent, so yeah.
Are you a Roger Federer fan? Is that the Federer
I
F?
sure am. That's a Federer. That's
15,
a
baby.
and then Nebraska Huskers in the middle. Yeah.
Did you go to Nebraska?
I did play tennis for the Huskers long time ago. So 2008 was my freshman year. Yeah.
2008.
Nice.
That's when Roger Federer was going to win that fifth. What number was that with that RF? 15 or something, right?
So I think that is just his logo. That's been around for a long time, and probably shouldn't say this out loud as a Federer fan because I don't know the entire story of it. But you're probably referring to number 18. He kind of did some stuff with his logo, I think, for his 18th slam.
Yeah, I was in high school when that logo came out. I played tennis in high school. Wasn't good enough to do college. But so you played at Nebraska. Were you pretty good? Like, were they D1?
I mean, yeah, I'm not quite sure. Should I say that I was good? I don't know, but
sure.
Yeah,
I played D1.
Adam will tell you who's the best volleyball player, west of Nevada.
You're talking to him right now, baby.
Every day.
I love it. Well, maybe I should grow a bit of that confidence, but no, I mean, I did fairly decent in college. Yeah.
You guys hang your jerseys up behind you in your office. That's how much there's Adam's volleyball jersey right behind Sean.
That's right. Chris, I'll tell you, it's not confidence. I'm ancient enough that nobody remembers what happened. And so you get to make your story as you go.
I love it. Good strategy.
Hey, we've got a great question that we always like to kick off with our guests, and especially you being a former, Division I student athlete. What would be your slam dunk restaurant NIL deal today? Not college you. Today, Chris, what's your slam dunk restaurant NIL deal? I
mean, it's not a restaurant, so I'm going to pivot, I guess, but just food related, anything related to Nutella. I mean, count me in. And that's a lifestyle right there. Yeah. So if there's a Nutella restaurant, which there probably is, I'll just say that.
Come to Chicago. We've got the first Nutella Cafe here downtown Chicago.
There you go. Look, Nutella
we'll
Cafe
host
it.
Yeah. We'll pitch you to them. It'll be great.
What is Nutella best on?
Everything. No, but probably bread. Actually, awesome on bananas.
Okay.
So
do you not eat Nutella, Sean?
I mean, I know, but I know that you can have Nutella on all kinds of different things. I wasn't sure if there was an optimal food item that you put Nutella on. So I was curious if Nutella King knew.
I've seen somebody put it on meat. I would stay away from that, but
that's like a fondue.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that I don't think I would like that, but anything else?
All right, Chris, tell us a little bit about Fanword. We follow you guys quite a bit, part of the NIL community. Tell us it in 30 seconds. Like tell us a little bit about it.
Fanword is really all about student athlete brand development. So we build different products to really help athletes build their brand, protect their brand, and also help them kind of market their brand. So I think the easiest way to kind of look at it is we're really trying to do whatever it takes to put athletes in the best position possible to take advantage of resources like you guys, right? Or like other platforms out there that they can use to monetize their name, image, and likeness. So we're really all about helping athletes tell their stories and understanding how they can, grow their audience and again, build up their personal brand. So that's really kind of our bread and butter. And we primarily work with athletic institutions. That's our number one customer, I guess. We work with roughly 40 schools, have 3 products on the market, and indirectly then work with thousands of athletes from these institutions.
Sweet. So if you go to fanword.com, just looking at it here, I think the 3 products are storytelling, education, and directory. Maybe?
Spot on. Yep.
Sweet. Got a very simple and easy to use navigate website. Okay.
Thanks.
It's interesting, right? Like we have a lot of conversations every day about how do we help our athletes sell more merch? How do we help them tell their story? Why did you pick these three? How did you come to this point? Like dive into a little bit, maybe your favorite one,
Sure.
Yeah,
no, I'll give you the quick backstory and then happy to elaborate on that last question too. But Fanword Stories was really our first product and what we kind of became known for as a company. So back when I launched this in 2017, the idea was really to help athletes get a little bit more of the recognition that I felt like they deserve. And whether it was high profile athletes or athletes from lower divisions or sports that weren't always in the spotlight, I just felt like it was very, very pretty much everything you saw online about athletes was about, their performance and their, numbers and stats and, that kind of stuff. But hardly anybody focused kind of who these athletes were underneath the jersey and outside of sports. And that's really something that I was madly passionate about and still am to this day. So that was really the first product of really, figuring out a way, can we help produce content and help, these athletes, again, become kind of known for more than just being an athlete. And we started reaching out to institutions to just kind of get a feel for, is this something you guys are interested in? Is this something that's, valuable to you and your fan bases and your sponsors and all that good stuff? And we just learned that there's a little bit of a, just a lack of resources, almost for the lack of a better word, of spending the time on producing this type of in-depth content to really help athletes across the board, again, tell their stories outside of athletics. So we kind of saw a little bit of an opportunity there and kind of just went after it. Obviously, many, many pivots later, we landed, where we're at today. But that was really the first product. And then when NIL came around, or when we found out about NIL, which was roughly 12 months before July 1st, 2021, we knew we wanted to be a part of this. And we knew that the storytelling, would be a big piece to it, but we wanted to kind of go beyond that. So that's when we kind of came up with Fanword Coach, which was our education product, or is our education product, I should say. And then as, July 1st came around and the market kind of started to evolve, we felt like that there was a need for a directory. And that's really kind of the, what brought Fanword Boost to come around.
So Chris, Fanword had existed before NIL, right?
Yep, spot on. Mm-hmm.
And it was primarily more the storytelling, helping athletes with brand and things like that. What were like the actual, if I'm an athlete at Nebraska, what would it mean like to work with you guys? Like what was that or what is that experience like?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So Fanword Stories was the only thing we were doing prior to NIL, and the concept really was to, we work with an institution. The institution purchases X number of content pieces from us, whether those are long form or short form, and then we collaborate with the institution to kind of, find the powerful stories. And then let's say the institution says, hey, it would be cool to tell, basketball players ABC story. We essentially get in contact with that athlete and then just start working on, what kind of story to tell, what's the best way to tell it. And then we provide the institution and the athlete with, usually a written piece. We kind of focus on kind of the first person perspective, Players Tribune style. That's kind of our bread and butter. But we also create landing pages. We create social graphics that the institution as well as the athlete can then use to kind of promote the story and drive traffic to, the content. So it really depends a little bit on the individual partnership, but for the most part, that's kind of the process. Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's an interesting concept coming from an athletic department. Chris, I worked at Maryland Athletics in the communications department, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And I know we used to see the Players Tribune stuff and we would say, gosh, we would love stories like that, but we didn't have the bandwidth to tell those first person stories. And so I can see exactly
Sean,
where you came in.
Talk to me about Players Tribune, because this is actually the second time I've heard about this today for the first time ever.
Yeah, so it sounds a lot like what Chris was doing with their first person stories. It's essentially an athlete is writing a very powerful story that comes first person from their perspective, but usually they have a ghostwriter, somebody that's really good at writing that writes the story on their behalf, but it's coming from their perspective.
So basically when I write blogs, that's really Sean writing blogs, or when my Twitter's running, it's Sean.
On the occasion. Yeah, but it's all about that social, or all about that emotional connection to the fans. We're always constantly thinking about how can we connect our athletes with our fans, get them more interested in our sports.
Spot on.
Buy tickets, come to games, whatever it might be.
And this is such a fantastic, model or opportunity, because like you were talking about, Chris, there are so many of these stories, ways that NIL has impacted athletes that go way beyond just those like marquee sponsorship deals. This guy's driving a Ferrari now. Like there's such a deeper and wider impact to tell and to give the athlete the platform to do that, give the athletics department the platform to be able to kind of wave the banner of their individual athlete stories as well. That's such a great value add there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And yeah, to your point, just to kind of add on to that, like I'm sure you guys all have heard the saying of, every athlete has a story. And I just kind of, we go far beyond that. We feel like every athlete has thousands of stories, right? Like you can tell a story about just, your Saturday's game in a gazillion different ways, right? And capturing the right story and learning how, like which story to tell and where to tell it and how to tell it. That's, the magic formula. And that's just what we're really trying to assist with. And to Sean's point, yeah, for the athletic department is often just a matter of, they don't have the bandwidth to do it. And providing them with powerful content that fans care about, sponsors care about, and really showcase, in the era of NIL, maybe who that athlete is outside of sports may open up an opportunity that, otherwise just would never open up. So, I appreciate you saying this.
Chris, when you guys do that, like say, so do you primarily work for the schools on behalf of the athletes, or are you working with the athletes directly? Like how does that work?
Yeah. So again, our customer is the athletic institution, right? So they purchase, again, X number of stories, for instance, and then they, for the most part, kind of, again, we work together on who to highlight and who to feature. But then, yeah, the institution gives us a name and says, hey, we would love for you to focus on this athlete. We learned about this, but we trust you well enough to kind of extract the powerful story or another storyline here. So it really depends a little. Yeah.
Go ahead. So then, So then does that mean you guys help push it too, or do you just give it back to the school so that they can then push it?
I mean, we help push it, but I mean, let's be real. The schools as well as the individual athletes have a much more powerful brand than we have, right? So the school, we often build a landing page for the institution all on brand, right? And that's where we publish the stories, send the school the link, send the school the social graphics as well as the athlete. And then the school publishes it, the athlete shares it, we share it, media outlets share it, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Wow. It's like you're a publicist. Yeah. And a marketing agency for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. To a point. Yeah.
What's one of your favorite stories you've published?
Oh man, honestly, one of my favorite stories, and again, it's such a tough question because we've done close to like 1,000 stories now, and there are so many powerful ones that really, I just love telling. But one that really stands out to me was actually with a Division III football player from a school called Nebraska Wesleyan, and the guy had like 900 followers on social media, but his story was incredibly powerful. Like he was, contemplating suicide because of a bad breakup. And he talks about it very openly and then kind of shifts gears and talks about, how his teammates kind of helped him out of that hole and what it meant to him. And then in his last game ever, right before that, he found out that the brother of his ex-girlfriend then had committed suicide. So he dedicated his last game to this guy, scored a touchdown in his final drive that he ever played, his first touchdown ever. I mean, it was just kind of like a movie-like, a storyline. Yeah. And that story just went completely viral, like legit viral. And what it was so cool about it is that the school had like maybe 8,000 followers. The athlete had like 800. But the power of the story just showcased. Doesn't matter, right? Like if the story is powerful enough, it will gain the traction and the attention. And it just was unbelievably great to see. And
So, Chris, when you talk about covering something like that, you guys have to do a lot of investigative work, interviewing. Like, how do you guys? What's that process look like? Do you have a copywriting team? Do you have like a video team? Do you have a creative team? Like, what goes into something like that kind of production? I mean, it seems intense.
Yeah. So I would say 95% of the content we produce is written content from that first person perspective, right? So just purely from an operations perspective, we don't have to fly out, right? And we have creative folks on our team. We have videographers, cinematographers. We have a lot of writers, and we have graphic designers, right? So we have a big creative team. But in this case, similar to as odd as it sounds, what we're doing here, we love these conversations. We're all about authenticity. Right, so we don't really like to script the interviews either. So yeah, we do our fair share of research, obviously, and the school often shares a sentence or two about why a particular athlete, for instance, was selected. But then yeah, it's really just a conversation, and because we are like a lot of the folks that do these interviews, we are kind of like we're not much older than these athletes. Pretty much all of us have an athlete background. We're not from the institution. We're not a media company. We actually give these athletes editorial control before anything is ever published. They get a chance to look at it. So they feel very comfortable opening up. And that, I think, adds to the power of these stories, making those really, unique and again, just fun to read. Yeah.
So has that part of the model shifted as you've gone into NIL, or is that still pretty much the exact same what you were doing prior to NIL? Has that shifted?
I mean, it has certainly evolved, right? Like, okay. But the concept of, again, us still selling to individual institutions hasn't changed. Sure. We just launched, I think, 10 new schools in the last 2 months, which is awesome. And really, really powerful. But especially with our latest product, this directory, we really, really, really see a big path for that moving forward. And we want to integrate service offerings like this to an individual athlete as well from an institution, for instance, that we aren't working with. So same goes for our education, right? We want to integrate these pieces into the directory. So we certainly see a different path for it moving forward. I mean, we even work with companies sometimes, right, that do an NIL deal, for instance, with an athlete, and want to have that story told. In this case, it might be video content, right? And we're more of a creative agency in that case. But anything related to storytelling and student athletes, we want to be top of mind for folks moving forward as well, for sure. Yeah.
What are you, Chris, most excited about? So obviously there's like the pivot to like offering the directory and education. Mm-hmm. Yep. What do you feel like is the long-term, like, what's the big crazy goal for you?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this is the big passion is definitely helping the, men's gymnast from a Division I school, build up a brand that he or she can monetize now because of our work and our help, right? So really just this empowerment piece is just fascinating to me, and really providing these athletes with everything they could possibly need to maximize their NIL potential. That is really what drives us. And the directory, I really think is a brilliant starting point. And granted, I'm biased because we came up with it, but I really think from a marketing perspective of really, increasing the visibility for these athletes and enhancing their accessibility, and really just making it easier for these athletes to showcase who they are. And then again, integrating it with services like the storytelling, like the education, really, I think could create these perfectly well-rounded athletes from a brand development perspective that really allows them to make the most of this new era. And that's really what we're shooting for. So a little bit of, wishy-washy answer here, Stephen, but that's really, it drives us without a doubt. It's part of our DNA.
I think one thing that, I even ask is like, how is this different? How is this, like you guys even say we want this to complement, like Fanword Boost, to complement your existing partnerships. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think sometimes people get confused, like, wait, I thought they were on that platform. What was going on this and that? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, spot on. So the core premise, I guess, of Fanword Boost, of our directory, is to give an athlete a profile, almost like a Linktree-like profile, where they get to aggregate pretty much everything about their brand and NIL opportunities in one place. So I don't have to explain that to you guys. There are so many platforms out there for athletes to monetize their NIL, right? We don't want to tap into that. We don't want to get into the deal facilitation piece, but we want to allow the athlete to list a link to the merch, right, that they're selling, to their Open Doors profile, to their market price profile, to the NFT they're selling, to other stuff, right? We want to give them the ability to have everything in one place. And then subsequently, pretty much filter it all or aggregate it all by institution, by conference, by sport, so that if you're in the Chicago area, you're a local business and you want to see all the Northwestern baseball players that are selling merch within 2 clicks, we want you to get that information. If you want to see all the Northwestern athletes in general that are on Cameo, we want you to get that information within 2 clicks. And that's what we've built, right? So that's really the long-term vision of the directory. We're not a marketplace that's competing with you guys, for instance, or anyone else that really puts dollars in the pockets of these athletes, but we want to help complement solutions like yours to drive more traffic to it and more eyeballs to it. And that's really, integrate. Yeah, go for it.
I think what's really cool, we've started to meet people in the space, market price, like open doors guys, influencer, and like everyone has such a everyone's like doing it for the betterment of the athlete.
Yeah.
I don't know, guys, like Adam, Sean, like, we're just talking to Jason at market price, and like everyone's kind of like finding a good spot, and like the link in bio part, like, duh, why isn't that there? Perfect. Fanword boost, right? Adam, any comments there on what it's like, what it's been like?
Chris, you and I met for the first time months ago. I can't remember if it was spring or early summer, and just from my side of the conversation, we had a lot of meetings, or I had a lot of meetings with people where it was like, I don't know what their kind of priorities are. Yeah. But, immediately there was this kind of synergy and understanding of what the actual priority is. Not just around, the near term, but also what's the long-term win here in this NIL space. I think as time has gone on, and a phrase that we kind of always throw around here internally is the score settles itself, right? And we've kind of seen that, and here we are full circle coming back to these conversations where a lot of these organizations that have an athlete first focus, that are trying to find sustainable long-term solutions for the betterment of the industry, for the betterment of the institution, for the betterment of the student athlete, are finding ways to fit that puzzle piece together, and it's creating this really exciting momentum in the space. So, you have this education and coaching side as well. I'm curious, from the institutional side as well as the athlete side, what are some of the challenges? What are you guys focusing on in terms of helping people navigate, helping people improve? Is it professional development? Is it unraveling this net of NIL? What are some challenges you guys are taking on there?
Yeah, so from the get-go, the way we kind of positioned Fanword Coach was more of a life skills development education, right? Like we're massive proponents of the 99%, right? Like you hear a lot about, the athletes getting a new car and signing 6-figure and 7-figure deals, but that's just not the norm. And to be frank with you, the schools that we work with, especially on the education side, it's just not a thing there, right? So we from the get-go really wanted to kind of hone in on that part of NIL, I guess, of really, how can we help these athletes develop life skills that will help them succeed outside of college, outside of NIL, and after college as well. And that's really what we've built, right? So it's essentially a platform full of educational resources, online courses, webinars, a marketplace directory, and some other educational stuff that really just teaches these athletes, everything from like more of like a protective education, like financial literacy and social media literacy and what to pay attention to in contracts and taxes and that good stuff. But then also like niche education, like podcasting or merchandise, or how to be a better storyteller, how to use a platform like LinkedIn, how to communicate with brands, right? So it's really, more of a well-rounded, holistic life skills approach than, here is how to maximize earnings, right? If that makes sense. It's part of it. But, yeah.
So then, Chris, do the athletes pay for that class, or is that something you guys just offer? Like, what is that like?
So it's, again, a product that we sell to institutions.
Gotcha.
So every institution that we partner with, they get a white label version of that platform. Then all of their athletes can sign up to that. And again, like all the educational content, that is something we want to integrate into Boost as well for, that athletes can then access individually and don't require their school to work with us. But at this point, yeah, it's, us partnering with the institution and the athletes having access to that. Yeah.
I think what's really cool our NIL approach it started, it's pivoting or it's evolving. And, what we're finding is our partnerships with the universities really, they're kind of like the anchor of all this.
Mhm.
And I compare, as I'm pitching to like a lot of investors and people right now, and I say like universities are trying to make the best possible experiences for their athletes no differently than a career center. So like at the University of Illinois, we have the Deloitte Career Center, and that's where you could go in for resume prep, and they would have mock interviews, they would hold career fairs. NIL is no different, right? Because it is professionalizing and preparing these adults for how to like operate in this real world that they're going to go in if their professional career doesn't work out, in pro sports. So I think this is the beginning. You guys are at the forefront of it. Adam, I'm curious, at Northwestern, you teach in sports management. What do you see from a higher ed standpoint? Are there classes starting to be spun up in this?
Yeah, 100%. And as with most things, it's really fascinating to watch the different institutions adopt their own different approaches, right? You have schools that attract the type of athlete that's a lot more entrepreneurial, maybe a lot more academically focused. Kind of understands. Duke is a great example of this. When you go to Duke, you're going to get a very wonderful education that probably is focused on some sort of financial services or some sort of business path, right? And so it's interesting to see a lot of these institutions start some of those undergrad and grad classes that are focused on, athletes and non-athletes to understand how to professionalize themselves in this space. But I think the biggest thing we're seeing is focusing on the athlete's ability to understand what their market actually is.
Do you think, Adam, or Sean, maybe? I mean, you were traveling with the athletes. Do you think they're going to start picking? How like maybe athletes are picking like easier classes because they know they are going to be working on their sports or whatever. Not to say like they're doing that as much as, do you think they're going to start to pick classes that will help their NIL?
Well, if they're not, they should. Right. It's the same way. I mean, I majored in kinesiology when I was in school. No small reason, because I was like, hey, man, I know there's going to be a bunch of other athletes in this program. I know this is going to help me, in my understanding of athletics and sports and performance and all that. And so, I knew I wasn't going to have to kind of double dip. Maybe it wasn't the most lucrative degree path I could have chosen. But yeah, I mean, if people aren't thinking about, hey, I should take a digital marketing class or an e-commerce class, or, I know I'm going to create a profile on Fanword, I'm going to go take a creative writing or a storytelling class. They 100% should be thinking about that for sure.
Sean, I was going to say the same thing. In fact, I think there might even be a greater sense of urgency for athletes to take those business marketing classes early. They have they have a bigger platform than any student on that campus. I think I always say that naturally, with NIL, it's going to be the same as any other businessman on campus or a kid that has an entrepreneurial spirit. The cream is going to rise to the top. It just so happens that athletes have larger platforms and they have a little bit of a greater urgency. If you're a big time freshman basketball player, you're going to want to learn how to best monetize what you're doing.
The other thing that is really exciting, and I think, Chris, you and I even chatted about this a long time ago, and we're starting to see it come to fruition now, is institutions and student athletes even leveraging the different departments on campus, right? Like when you get a new NIL contract, you're taking it to the law school and having some students look over it with you. When you're creating some video content or creative content, you're going to, the digital media school and partnering with, some of the students there or the professors there. And it's this kind of, ecosystem, like you were talking about, Stephen, that actually kind of helps everybody involved. And, I know, Chris, you're close to Nebraska. Is that kind of what you guys are seeing down there in Lincoln, is really kind of grappling with this whole ecosystem supporting each other?
Yeah, 100%. And I love the way you both put that, Adam and Sean. And Nebraska, I believe, was one of the first, maybe the first school to launch an NIL program back in the day, and to actually get campus involved as well. And we do talk to campus quite a bit too. And yeah, you're right, Adam. We did chat about this. Like Nebraska actually does make a conscious effort of involving the journalism school from a media perspective and all that good stuff. And I think what did we see the other day? Was it Syracuse the other day? Was it Syracuse where students, I think, are offering free legal support? It was some institution, so don't quote me on it. But anyways, to your point, yeah, you definitely see more and more departments getting involved, and I think that's one of the beauties of NIL, right? If you stop looking at it from a exclusively from a financial perspective, it puts a lot of emphasis on building these types of skills. That because I mean, let's be real. 2 years ago, there was probably a storytelling class or some sort of similar resource available as well to athletes, but they probably didn't care about it as much. Now with NIL, at the very least, I think it creates a little bit more emphasis and urgency, I guess, to develop those skills. And I think that is awesome and one of the best underlying benefits of the whole NIL era. So yeah, definitely.
I think what's really interesting, we say at Campus Inc. We work with students. Some of our students just happen to be athletes. Sean has actually spent the last couple of weeks building out kind of this program around working with students to support our athletes from a media journalism standpoint. Sean, could you talk a little bit about what you've been? It's different than obviously writing in first person and stuff. But Sean is all about these big community building things. Sean, can you walk us through what you're doing right now and how this is helping to sell merch?
If you're going to go to somebody and try to sell merch straight up, yeah, you're going to have a little bit of success, but it's not going to be, I don't know. It's so in your face. I don't know. It doesn't resonate with me as much as if I am in a community and I'm in a community of other fans who are really into it. And then the shop is also secondary. So that's kind of how we view the social accounts. If we were to start one at Nebraska, it would be Nebraska NIL store. Would love to make that happen, by the way. If we were to start one there,
they've got a few things to figure out this week, Sean. Maybe not a good week for Nebraska.
Yeah, but it will be this community of fans following the social account, and so I tell our students that run our accounts that we have right now, I want you to be cheerleaders for your teams. I want us to be the good guys. There's so much negativity surrounding sports and criticism. I want us to be a platform where people can go for positive news around your school and your sports and what's going on, and make the athletes that we have signed feel good, make the teams that we have signed feel good. Oh, and by the way, we're also selling merchandise for these athletes. And if you buy their merch, you're putting money directly into their pockets at a pretty good commission rate. So that's kind of the whole thought process behind that.
Yeah, but I think what's cool is like you're training them on how to use Twitter the right way, and training them on how to be a cheerleader and what to live tweet and what to do this. It comes naturally to you. But when you teach a 20-year-old how to do this, I mean, and they go to their first job at graduation, they'll be like, "Well, tell me about what you did," and you're like, "Go to the Indiana store and you can see what I did." I know what I'm doing,
but in reality, and I tell the kids this too. Like this is a sandbox for you. Throw things against the wall. We used to say this at Maryland all the time. Like social media, it's such a finicky thing. You never know what's going to stick. So just try new stuff. Don't be afraid to do it. And so we started to see that with our students a little bit, where they were, it happens with everybody. You're a little hesitant at first, and then you're like, "Oh, well, I'll just try the next post. If this one doesn't work, I'll do that."
Chris, do you guys ever teach them do you ever manage their social for them, or is that no?
Yeah, we don't manage their social. No, we have through the educational product. We have a social media literacy course / webinar, and through Boost again, there will be a lot of service offerings through Fanword Boost again. A lot of the educational resources and the storytelling will be some of that, but there will be other services kind of geared towards helping athletes with certain brand development related pieces, not, on the community front per se, what you just talked about, Sean. And I love that. And I love the concept of it. And it speaks to what Adam, mentioned earlier of building something for the long term, and the value will come inevitably if you do that. And that's just one of the, quick shout out. One of the many reasons why I love you guys. So I
think this is interesting because we come from these are tech companies, right? Or tech plays, and we're playing. People are like, "Oh, you sell NIL merch," and like, yeah, we sell NIL merch, but there's such this long tail game we're playing that I love when people like to us, like, oh, you're just selling like Fanatics or like this. And I'm like, yeah, sort of, but we're not, yeah, merch kind of comes second, kind of the same with you guys. Right. And it's like, you go to the schools, you create this stuff so it has long-term lasting, like, that's what we call in business, like there's finite games and infinite games. There's like a famous talk, and these are long-term games that you guys are playing and that we're playing.
No,
Sean,
I was.
you were
The one thing I would
something.
add on that is, and I'm sure, Chris, that you have seen this with different schools. There's some schools that just get it when you're selling it to them, and there's just others that don't, and they want to know, well, how does this directly benefit us monetarily or financially? And it's hard to say like how much value a story brings to them or whatever. And so you're just, I'm sure you've dealt with that, right, Chris?
Oh, 100%. And yeah, I mean, with Fanword stories, for instance, we often like offer it or essentially pitch it to them. Hey, sell it as a sponsorship asset, right? Sell this as a content series. And because to your point, that does come up. Like, of course, they often look at any investment they make from an ROI perspective. And if you can, directly showcase, well, you're going to get 50 grand if you can sell this as a sponsorship asset and you just have to pay us X. Look at the difference, right? I mean, and sure, that might, go to multimedia rights holders, but nonetheless, certainly that conversation comes up a lot and it makes sense. But yeah, the athletic departments that are, and I don't want to say that the ones that are looking at it from that angle aren't forward thinking, but the ones that are, certainly forward thinking and embrace NIL as more than just, again, just don't look at it exclusively from a financial perspective. I do think they're, you instantly feel that alignment because they get it, right? And it's very, very difficult to sell to anybody for that matter if they don't have that same mindset. And quite frankly, also not quite sure those would be the types of schools we want to work with because we constantly would feel like an uphill battle of trying to convince them of the value of what we do. And I mean, even from like just exclusively, again, going back to the storytelling piece, our content performs really, really well. But none of our partners look at it from, okay, how does it perform compared to X, Y, and Z? Like, we need to know all these metrics because it is secondary to them. They understand the value of giving their athletes a voice, of using it in recruiting, of saying, hey, you come to our school, we give you actually, once again, a voice to tell your own story and be more than just an athlete. The fans, commenting, the athletes reaching out saying, hey, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to share my story. They see that value, right? And it's hard to put a monetary value on that, right? But yeah, so to answer your question, we definitely see it, but we're very, very fortunate that the schools that we work with don't always just look at it exclusively from that perspective.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about some of that professional development piece that comes along with the digital marketing, the way that NIL opens up some opportunities for that. But I think what you just touched on is this whole other massive value add around what it's like to be a student athlete and feeling like so much of your daily life, so much of your future is a little bit out of your hands, especially in this NIL era, right? Like there's so many conversations happening at the legislative level, at the NCAA level, at the institutional level, where the student athlete doesn't have a voice in that conversation. And what a great tool to be able to provide literally the definition of you get to tell your story as an individual and amplify that across multiple channels. What's some of the feedback you've heard from student athletes? There's a lot of pressures, there's a lot of challenges. Is there is there a mental health kind of a value add here to what you guys are able to do as well?
Yeah, I mean, again, it sounds maybe a bit cheesy, but it's one of the most rewarding parts of what we're doing with the storytelling product, of just getting that feedback from the athletes of, thanking us for, allowing them to literally tell their story the way they wanted to. And again, also by us giving them editorial control, they don't have to worry about saying something during the interview that, they don't want to have in that story. Or, like we're not a newspaper that takes things out of context or whatever. Again, like they get full control. And that really resonates with them. And yeah, I mean, a lot of the partners that we work with, I mean, some specifically hone in on, let's say, Title IX stories. Some hone in on mental health stories. So everybody uses it a little bit differently. And when these athletes do open up to us and then thank us for just helping them kind of put their words into a story, it's pretty rewarding, not gonna lie. Yeah.
Chris, do you guys work with the collectives at all? Like, is there a vehicle where the collectives are actually like helping with this, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we have 2 active partnerships with 2 collectives, and we are talking to plenty other collectives too, of really just, in this case, we kind of pitch it as a, tell the stories of those deals that you, for instance, helped facilitate, and what it was like for the athlete, what it was like for the brand, and that kind of stuff. But look, let's be real, similar to what Adam talked about earlier, a lot of these collectives are having other issues right now and aren't always, per se thinking of it from the angle we're looking at. So they have other, things just kind of on their minds right now. But once they start facilitating those deals and want to, it's a marketing vehicle for them, right? To get these stories told beyond maybe that one social post that will, that's part of the deal. So yeah, there's definitely an avenue, and there are fortunately a lot of collectives that embrace, the content / storytelling piece. So yeah, we'll have those conversations. For sure.
That's been something I've been talking to quite a few collectives and like kind of asking about their marketing. And it's like, what are you doing to storytell? Mm-hmm. What are you doing to, like, I think Hoosiers for Good, they've been putting out a lot of really good content and some things. And it's been cool to watch and see how they're positioning that. I always just like to get that take. Well,
yep.
Cool. Chris, what's next for Fanword? What should we be expecting? What does it look like? Tell us next plans as we start to wrap.
Yeah, so we're actually also kind of starting a fundraise to really kind of support where we're going. So anyone interested in having a conversation, reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter or wherever else. But yeah, again, things are going really well, which is great. The storytelling continues to flourish, which is really, awesome. We come up with some really neat partnership announcements in the next few weeks, which we're super excited about. And then, long term, we really, really are going to push Boost as kind of hopefully becoming the baseline of Fanword, and everything else kind of integrating as services, including obviously the storytelling that still, we still will work with the athletic institutions, obviously, and do all that fun stuff. But really think that there's a big need and value add for that directory. So we're going to push that pretty heavily, and then continue to focus also on the content creation, the storytelling for sure. So long story short, lots of exciting stuff happening, and yeah, we're pumped about it.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate this, everyone. This is Chris from Fanword. We are here with Adam and Sean from Campus Inc. with another episode of the NIL show. Chris, thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll have to keep in touch.
Yeah, had a lot of fun here, guys, so appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Take care, everyone.